Welcome to our seminar Künstlersozialkasse and Social Insurance Basics. I am Celia. I am working as an event manager at Kreativkultur Berlin. And this event today, I will just This event today is a cooperation between touring artists and Kreativkultur Berlin and is the last event of this year's Get Started First Steps in Self-Employment series, where we offered monthly online seminars and also networking for your start into self-employment. And this is also the second Künstlersozialkasse seminar. And we are very happy that you are here and joining us today. I want to introduce you very shortly to us, Kreativkultur Berlin. We are the Berlin Consultation Center for Cultural and Creative Professionals. We are funded by the Senate Department for Culture and Social Cohesion and co-funded by the European Union. And we have two teams that provide free information and advice across all sectors and industries. In the cultural funding consultation team on funding issues and the search for funding, project development and implementation, and in the creative industries consultation team on financing issues, business ideas and plans. And apart from group and individual consultations, we offer workshops, seminars like this one, info session, networking events. So check out our event calendar for more information. And another important note, advice on the KSK is not part of our daily consulting business. So this is also why we offer this event today. But for further infos, we are not the right address for further information about the KSK. So we are not consulting about the KSK. More information you find here on our thing. And now I will stop my presentation and give the word to you, Felix.
Hello, thank you, Celia, for the introduction. I have a small announcement. I have a rough throat today, so I will be drinking a lot in between, and hope to get through these 3 hours that we have together now. With our all-time favorite topic, the Künstlersozialkasse. I assume some of you have already dealt with that. Some of you might need to deal with it in the near future. It can be frustrating. Usually in the end, you're lucky if you're in and everything is sorted out. We try to give a few insights in how to make the procedure as smooth as possible. I'm gonna share a presentation with you now. And we have like roughly 1.5 hours, which is going to be full frontal, just me telling you what's going on. And then we have a lot of time for your questions in the breakout rooms. Let's start. I think you can see my presentation now. Okay. We had the introduction already. A few words about the project that I'm working for, Touring Artist. Touring Artist is what is called a mobility information point. So we give information and consultancy on administrative topics, mainly for cross-border artistic activities, short-term activities. But also recently in the past years, we increasingly started giving advice to artists that are new to Berlin, that came from non-EU countries on administrative topics. We have a free consultation service, but we also do workshops. We have a website that is very extensive where you can find a lot of information on different topics. That is basically what we do. Touring Artists is not an institution. This is sometimes misunderstood. Touring Artists is a project from 3 different institutions. I personally work at the International Theatre Institute. Also with us is the International Association of Fine Arts and the German Dance Association. We, especially for the consultancy for newly relocated artists to Berlin, we have a funding from the Berlin Senate, Department for Culture and Social Cohesion. Our main project on the short-term cross-border activities is funded by the Federal Commissioner for Culture and Media, hopefully also in the future. That is with huge question marks right now, but yeah. If you need consultation on similar topics in our neighboring countries, you will most likely find a similarly working organization through the so-called mobility information point networks. There is 11 of us right now, mostly in European countries, but there is also one in the US. This is our website. Check it out. I think you will find a lot of information on the website. Yeah. Today, we will talk about what is the KSK good for, how does it work, how to get in, how to stay in. And when we talk about how to stay in, we also talk about having other work activities besides being a self-employed artist or publicist. And we also talk about the relation of KSK and having a family, and also on the relation of KSK and Bürgergeld. And then we will have the breakout rooms for your questions. So I try to make it like very as brief as possible so we have more time in the breakout rooms. But still, some basic information needs some time. So I think like an hour and 20 minutes, maybe an hour and a half. We'll do it for the first part. To start, big question, what is the KSK actually good for? Probably when you're not in the KSK yet, everyone tells you, well, you should join the KSK. But sometimes it's a bit difficult to grasp why you should actually do it. The KSK gives self-employed artists and publicists access to the public social security system in a way that members of the KSK only pay half of the social security contributions, and the KSK pays the other half. That is a system that you will also find when you work in employment in Germany. It's a so-called sozialversicherungspflichtige Anstellung, which means you are employed, and from your gross salary, the social security, half of the social security contributions are deducted, and your employer pays for the other half. So this system that usually only applies to employees is then also transferred to self-employed artists and publicists, but with a lot of nuances and differences, and we're going to look into that now. First big difference is that the KSK includes health insurance, pension insurance, and long-term care insurance. It does not include unemployment insurance and accident insurance. When you're an employee, you also have these two types of insurances. As a self-employed artist or publicist, you don't have them if you're insured through the KSK. There are ways to get in the public accident insurance voluntarily. There is also private accident insurance. Then there is also ways to get into the unemployment insurance voluntarily, but that is very difficult. It doesn't work out for a lot of artists. It's kind of bound to you having an employment first and then switching over to being self-employed. And then a side note, for self-employed persons who migrate to Germany from a third country, non-EU country, with which there is no social security agreement that includes the recognition of previous insurance periods, the KSK is almost the only opportunity to join the public health insurance scheme, gesetzliche Krankenversicherung. For instance, let's say you are from the US and you move to Germany and you work as a freelancer, as a self-employed artist. You will not be able to join the public health insurance voluntarily, because they won't accept you. You could only join the private health insurance, or you join through the Künstlersozialkasse. So that is the only chance. Then you might say, okay, well, I can also have private health insurance. It's fine for me. Private health insurance can be more or less cheap when you are young and you just started with your career, and then you might get an offer for 200 or 300 euros a month, and it has a lot to offer. Usually the service is way better. The problem with private health insurance is it can get very, very expensive the older you get. And suddenly you have monthly contributions of 600, 800, or 1,000 euros. And then also it is very, very difficult to switch from the private health insurance system to the public health insurance system. There's only very little opportunities. And if you're older than 55, it's really difficult. To go maybe a step back to the question, what is the KSK actually? To have a better understanding of what the KSK is, the KSK is not an insurance company. It's not a health insurance. It's not a pension insurance. It's more a sort of intermediary organization that transfers your contributions to the corresponding public insurances, mainly a health insurance that you choose. In Germany, there's a lot of different public health insurances, and the pension insurance. There's only one pension insurance, public pension insurance in Germany, and that's where the KSK transfers the money to. Long-term care insurance is also transferred to the health insurance. And there is a political background of the KSK, which is interesting. So the KSK was created out of advocacy from artists, from self-employed artists and publicists, because they were complaining that their situation is rather unstable economically, and that they would need a better access to the public social security scheme with additional support. And this is why the KSK was created in 1983, which is more than 40 years ago. So right now you have the first artist getting retired that have been in the KSK for the whole career. How does it work? Well, it's rather simple at the beginning. So you have to join the Künstlersozialkasse, and then you estimate your annual profit. And then the KSK calculates your monthly contribution, and you just pay it, and everything is sorted out. Sounds easy, but it's not that easy, unfortunately. We're going to start with the contributions first. How do the contributions work? Then we talk about how to get in, and so on and so forth. So what is your monthly contributions? You take your annual income, that as a self-employed person is your profit. So it is your revenue, everything that comes in, minus your expenses. That is your profit. And then you calculate 9.3% for the pension funds, roughly 8.5% for the health insurance, but that is different for each health insurance because all of them have an extra fee, and the extra fee can be different. For instance, AOK currently has the highest extra fee, and then there is ones with extra fees that are way lower. So it is probably something between 8 and 9%, but the average currently is 8.5%. And then 2.4% go to the long-term care insurance. And this is getting less if you have kids. Then it might be, for instance, 1.8% if you have one kid. Let's look at an example. You have an annual income of 10,000 euros. Then 9.3%, which is 930 euros, go to the pension funds, roughly 850 euros go to the health insurance, and 240 euro go to the nursing insurance or long-term care insurance. So your total annual contribution would be 2,020 euros, and your monthly contribution will be most likely 168 euros. So this can be a bit more or less depending on your health insurance or whether you have kids or not, but this is roughly the area we are talking about. Let's say you have a low income in 1 year and you have 5,000 euros annual income. Then 465 euro goes to the pension funds, but then 636 euro go to the health insurance. So this is actually way more. So what's the deal here? There is, for the health insurance, there is a minimum income which is taken in for the calculation, which is currently 7,490 euros. So the KSK for the health insurance, they would always assume you have an income of 7,490 euros and take this as a minimum basis. So then in the end, your monthly contribution will be a bit more than 100 euros. So if we go back, 10,000 would be roughly 170 and 5,000 will be roughly 100. So it's not half of that. So at a certain point, it doesn't get potentially less. This just as a side information. Okay, and then usually what people say when they hear about this amounts of monthly contributions, they usually say, I currently have an expat insurance and this is way cheaper. My expat insurance is way cheaper. I pay 70 euros a month. Why would I suddenly pay 170 euros or maybe 200 euros a month, depending on your income? It's a good question, actually, but there is a lot of points you have to consider. First of all, with the expert health insurance plans, they don't offer full coverage of health issues. And this is really important because if something happens, you might have to pay very high fees. So this expert health insurance is, in my opinion, not really a long-term solution. Number one. Number two is, and this is even more important, especially when you're a non-EU citizen, expert insurance plans are usually not accepted when applying for a residence permit renewal. So you can use them to enter the country. You can also use them to apply for your first residence permit. But when you have the second appointment for the residence permit renewal, usually the migration office does not accept that. And at that point, you should be in the KSK or you should be in a full-scale private health insurance or in another sort of public health insurance. Expert insurance plans also don't include long-term care insurance and also don't include options for family insurances. That means if you have kids, you also have to get another insurance for them, for example. And then there is the pension fund contributions. You also have to consider that. So the pension fund contributions are, first of all, important to a certain degree. Not only to have a pension and to think about your future, but also because you might need it if you want to apply for a permanent residence permit. Then usually as a self-employed person, they ask 5 years of paid pension fund contributions to apply for that. What is interesting right now with the change of the naturalization law in Germany, you can now become a citizen even before getting a permanent residence permit. But that's on another sheet. But for the permanent residence permit, you need the 5 years of paid pension fund contributions. And on top of that, after paying for 5 years, you earn the right to a German pension. And consider that you pay €1 and the KSK pays another euro. So it's always matched by the KSK, so to say. And having the German, if you plan to stay in Germany like on a long-term basis, then obviously that is the best way to start paying into the pension insurance. If you leave Germany for a non-EU country, you can either get a reimbursement of your paid contributions, or there are some countries that have social security agreements with Germany, and you even have the possibility to receive a German pension while living in that country. This is Turkey, Tunisia, Morocco, and the countries of the Western Balkan, Bosnia, Montenegro, and North Macedonia, I think. Yeah. So for these countries, you always have the option. To have a small excursus, so to say, to the question, okay, well, I pay half of the contributions, the KSK pays the other half of the contribution, but how does the KSK pay for the other half? Where does the money come from? Just shortly going to explain it to you. There's one part that comes from the federal state. So basically, the federal state of Germany says we want to support the artist, and we pay 20% of the contributions. So that comes from that side. And then there is another part that is left, that is 30%, and that is covered by a fee that is called Künstlersozialkasse. It is a fee that companies who pay artists or publicists a fee for their service have to deduct. And it's currently 5%, and next year it's going to be 4.9%. So when you are, for instance, let's say you are a business and you hire a composer to make a jingle for your new advertisement, and you pay the composer a fee of, let's say, 10,000 euros, then you have to calculate another 5% that you will pay to the KSK. And with that amount, your social security is financed, basically. And what's important for you, if you are just an artist doing artistic services, you don't have to think about this. This is the obligation of the companies that assign you with a job, but it's not your work. They are audited. They are audited by the German pension insurance, and it's their business. It's not your business. But this is the cake of the different shares for you to see. But it can be a case for you when you have other artists that you assign. For instance, you get a funding to make a theater project, and then you receive all the funding and you will pay the fees for the other artists that are involved in the project. And then you have to calculate that you also have to pay 5%. No matter if they are in the KSK or not. And this is really important. So it's Künstlersozialabgabe is one field, is one area that you have to think of if you assign artists. Being a member of the Künstlersozialkasse is another cup of tea. So there's two different things of one institution, so to say. And you only have to think about the Künstlersozialabgabe if you really assign the artist. And what we see sometimes is that misunderstandings arise because it is not clear if someone is talking about their own KSK contributions as an artist, the 9.3, 8.5, 2.4% that you pay, or if they're talking about the Künstlersozialabgabe that they have to pay if they assign artists with jobs. But that was just an excursus. And now we're going to go into the big question of how to enter the Künstlersozialkasse. Let's say, okay, I finally convinced you joining the KSK is good. It's for your own benefit. How do you do that? It's a bit tricky. There is a very general basis at the beginning. Who can join the KSK? Rather simple. Self-employed artists and publicists with an annual income of at least 3,900 euros from that self-employed activity. So it's not that much actually. It's 325 or something euros a month. Like it's no one will be able to make a living from this amount of money. So even with that small amount of income from self-employed artistic or publicist activity, you will be able to join the Künstlersozialkasse. But there are a few buts to that, and we will look at that. First of all, the big question, well, who is an artist and who is a publicist? And this is basically what the KSK is dealing with the whole day. I think they have, I don't know, 50 employees working in the city of Bremerhaven. That is where the KSK is located. Most of them are caseworkers, Sachbearbeiter, and they are checking applications and they are deciding whether you are an artist or not. There is a basis to that. There is a law, special law for the KSK. This is what they're referring to. And then there's a lot of legal cases that had happened in the past, and this is also an orientation for them. But yeah, in the end, this is what the main job that the KSK is doing for applicants. Who is an artist? Musicians, fine or performing artists, or designers that create, practice, or teach art. Who is a publicist, according to the KSK? Writers, journalists, or translators that create original, non-technical texts. Many forms of PR work are also included in this. This is also very interesting because there is the whole section of public relations is sometimes not really seen as, or people even themselves don't see themselves as artists or publicists, but they also go under that category and they are usually eligible for joining the Künstlersozialkasse. You can be active in several fields. You don't have to apply just as a musician when you also work as a translator. But you have to define a main field, so they have a rough orientation. This is a list that you will find in the sheet of the Künstlersozialkasse. And I think the basis for this list has been created in 1975. It's a very old document. Some new categories have been added in the past, but there is a lot of categories of artistic activities that you might not find in this list. My recommendation is try to find 1, 2, 3 categories that fit the most to what you're actually doing. If you really cannot find your category at all, you have to describe it. It's always the last field of that sheet. Yeah, don't tick 20 boxes because you think, well, sometimes I do this, sometimes I do that. I'm also an outside eye for my friend's production, so I could also be a dramaturg. Tick the boxes where you have a practice and where you have invoices and contracts for, so you can prove that you actually do it. Try to create as little confusion as possible with your application. Big question. What about teaching? This is a really, really tough question, unfortunately. Teaching, if the teaching is for the sake of the art, then teaching is seen as a reason to join the KSK. So what works? Everything with a focus on learning an artistic technique. If that is in the focus, if we have like an artistic technique that is also considered by the KSK as artistic and not as something else, and the focus is that you teach how it is done, how to be able to perform, for instance, or to create pieces, then you can join the KSK with also being a teacher, and this is also considered in the application. What does not work is if the focus of your teaching is something else beside the artistic techniques. We have a lot of activities, especially in the field of socioculture, so where the main goal is for maybe to have teaching for inclusion. And so the main focus is to work with maybe with kids that are underrepresented, for instance. And then the artistic technique is in the background. It's sometimes really hard to say what is the focus and what is the background. So this is usually teaching, or sometimes teaching can become a tricky question. What does not matter, and this is interesting, is whether you teach professionals or amateurs. So that doesn't make a difference if it's for the sake of the art. Who else might face difficulties joining the KSK? This is just a short list. You could extend the list forever. This is my impression. I'm just going to give you a few examples. We have the producers in the field of film, or especially in the field of performing arts. Really tricky. If you would apply as a producer in the field of performing arts, the KSK would most likely say, no, you do organizational work. Producers in the performing arts do not do artistic or publicistic work. But you can maybe try to not apply as a producer. Don't stick too much on terms or on special wordings for your profession, but you can maybe apply as a dramaturg that also does public relations work. And then maybe as a third field, you also do the organizational work, but the dramaturgy work and the PR work is maybe more important. And then that is a reason to join the Künstlersozialkasse. Tour managers, artist managers, booking agents, these are fields that are usually considered to be non-artistic, really tricky as well. Here again, you might try to find a direction of public relations, maybe. But again, it also depends. You cannot really, you cannot make up like jobs that you don't do. So you have to have proof of everything, and it has to be clear from your invoices that you do public relations and no artist managing works. So this is kind of difficult finding the right solution for the car. Same as with curators. Also here we have workarounds. A lot of curators create publications, written publications. And if you focus on that, if you don't stick to the term of being a curator, but if you instead say, well, you are a publicist and you write information texts about artists, about exhibitions, etc., and your invoices and your contracts give proof of that, then you might also be able to join the Künstlersozialkasse without sticking on the term of being a curator. We see a lot of difficulties with dancers because a lot of dance is considered as sports by the KSK. In my eyes, there is not really a workaround for that. This is a situation which might change maybe in the future, but it requires political advocacy. It most likely also requires to have a legal case for that, or maybe a couple of legal cases. But currently, like urban dance, hip hop dance, somatic dance, these are fields from my experiences that are really difficult. Also, a lot of technical professions are really difficult. For instance, sound engineers. It works out if your focus is an artistic focus. So you create sound, you try to reorganize sound. And if it's not so much about making a recording, for instance. We also have online publicists that mainly generate income through affiliated links. This can also be very tricky. Usually the KSK says, well, you are a broker then because you offer other services through your website. Same is also true for Kunsthandwerk. Like if you design, I don't know, if you work with gold or if you work with different pieces of fashion or with other materials. So you create, I don't know, jewelry, etc. This is usually very, very difficult. if not impossible, or like tattoos, for instance. I would say it's almost impossible if your focus is not on, let's say, just creating the designs for tattoos, for instance. So we have a lot of groups that have difficulties that at least need to find workarounds when preparing the KSK applications. And then there are a few other questions that come up sometimes. What about associates of GmbHs, like limited companies? We see that a lot in the film sector, but also in the sector of public relations. And here we have, it's rather simple. Yeah, this is possible. It depends a bit on your status in the GmbH, how you work, or if you are really self-employed or not in the GmbH. This is a very long question, but in a lot of cases, it is possible. And then we have another question that also comes up that people say, well, I was classified as a Gewerbe. So, you know, in Germany, we have the differentiation between freiberuflich activities and Gewerbe. And Gewerbe, freiberuflich is sometimes maybe a bit mistakenly translated into freelancing. Liberal profession would be a better translation, maybe. It's a group of jobs that are defined in catalogs. Everything else is Gewerbe. And Gewerbe is usually trade or something in the field of trade. Gewerbe is technically, being a Gewerbe is technically not a reason for exclusion, but there is also a lot of similarities between the distinction of Gewerbe and freie Berufe in a taxational term and how the KSK defines what constitutes artistic work. Students can also join the KSK. It's a bit tricky. You have to have a self-employed artistic or publicist activity that takes up at least 20 hours a week. And this is a problem, especially for non-EU citizens, because that might contradict your residence permit. For EU citizens or Germany citizens, this is feasible technically. And then there is also the chance of joining the KSK only for the pension insurance if you work less than 20 hours, but it's a significant and prospective field that you work in. So it cannot be like one-off jobs that you do, but it has to be something that happens on a regular basis and is substantial. Okay, now we know who can join, who cannot join, who might face difficulties, but what exactly do you have to do to join? You have to fill out the Fragebogen zur Prüfung der Versicherungspflicht nach dem Künstlersozialversicherungsgesetz. It's a really nice description of a form that you will find on the website of the KSK. It is, I think, 15 pages long, so it's quite long. It's in German. You can get help for that. There is a lot of services that offer like the chance to go through the application together with you. At least I would recommend to find someone who knows German. So you fill out that form. And then with that form, you send material that proves that you are an artist or a publicist. And then the caseworkers will check if they would really also confirm you as artist or publicist. So the material includes invoices for your self-employed artistic services. This is the most important part. Invoices and contracts, old and current contracts. Not that old, but like recently old. And then on top of that, you also send additional material that proves your status as an artist. Flyers and posters of your shows, your website, your social media. If you have an artistic university diploma, this is a plus, but it doesn't guarantee you that you can join the KSK. If you have newspaper articles, magazine articles about your work, that is usually great. My experience is that this makes it a bit faster sometimes. And then obviously also audio-visual material of your work that exists. So this can be also YouTube links, or yeah, or SoundCloud links, etc. For the form, what is important? You don't need to have a Steuernummer, a tax number yet. So this is not asked in the form. But at the same time, to write invoices, obviously you need a tax number. So it's kind of, sometimes I get asked this question, like, I don't have my tax number yet, can I apply? Well, you can start the procedure of the application, but at a certain point you need to hand in invoices because otherwise they won't proceed. And to write the invoices, you need your tax number. What you definitely need is your Steuer ID, your tax ID. That is the number that you receive when you register in Germany, or if you're born in Germany. You also need to give the Sozialversicherungsnummer. A lot of people don't have a Sozialversicherungsnummer. This is especially the case for those that are in the expert insurances. For those, the Sozialversicherungsnummer, the Social Security number, will be generated with the application. And then there is a lot of other pages that go into different directions. You must tell them whether you work abroad. And for this, it is not about showing off to the KSK. It's about what you really do. Because if you work abroad on a regular basis, they have to check if Germany is actually responsible for you. So the more you work abroad, the more they have to check. So if you just, I don't know, you just fill out what you actually do. You don't fill out something that is like a vaguely idea that you have that might happen in the next year, because everything else might extend the application procedure. Same is also true with side jobs, because a side job also means the KSK has to check whether they are responsible, or maybe someone else is responsible. Maybe you have an employer, etc. So also here it's important to only fill in stuff that you actually do, whether it is self-employed or in employment. Because again, otherwise this will extend the whole procedure. And then also in the form, you have to estimate your income for the current year. And this is the interesting part of the KSK, because your annual contributions and your monthly contributions are not based on your actual income, but on your estimation. So how do you estimate your income? First of all, try to be as realistic as possible and rather pessimistic than optimistic. Because if your estimation is higher than your actual income, you don't get a refund of paid contributions. If you are too pessimistic, on a regular basis, you might get problems when being audited. So what the KSK is doing, and we will talk about this also in a bit, the KSK is auditing their members on a regular basis, and they are checking if your estimations more or less match your actual income. And they do this retrospectively for a couple of years. And if there is a difference, then you might have problems. You have the income, that is the basis for your estimation, and your income is your taxable income. So if you have stipends that are exempted from income tax, they most likely don't count as income for the KSK as well. And then you wait, and you wait longer, and it might take a very long time actually. So on this slide I have written, yeah, it might take a couple of months. Actually, recently I have heard numbers that were rather shocking, like 12 months, 14 months, 16 months was the highest I've heard. This is, yeah, this is rather frustrating. But this is another case. Usually you should assume maybe an average of, let's say, 5 to 8 months. This is what happens most of the time. In between, the KSK might ask for additional documents to see also what happens in the meantime, or if it's not sufficient what you have brought to them in the first place. Also, you can send additional documents. If you have more contracts and invoices that support your case, just send them in between. If you get rejected, obviously you can file an objection, or you can apply again with a different situation. Let's say you applied as a curator, which was maybe not a good idea in the first place, and they rejected your application. And then instead of filing an objection, you can just try to apply as a publicist that writes articles about artists. When you get accepted, you will be insured retroactively starting from the day you applied. And this day is commonly the day that you filled out the very first form on this website of the KSK. So there's a very short form with just your contact information. If you fill out that form, basically you make it count, and then the timer begins. And then you have another, I think, 4 weeks to fill out the extended form and hand in your extended application. So you will be insured retroactively from the day you applied. If you paid public health insurance contributions in the meantime, maybe you were on the voluntarily public health insurance, you receive half of your contributions back because the KSK pays the half and you are insured retrospectively. But you must pay the half of your pension insurance from that day. So usually this somehow matches out more or less. So usually if you are already in the public health insurance, then you have you don't really have a back payment, or it's just it's a small amount. Sorry, by the way, I have to correct. You don't get the back payment from the KSK itself, but from the health insurance directly. This is the institution that makes the back payment. It is different if you are in private insurance. If you have a full-scale private insurance and you want to switch to the public health insurance, the KSK sets 2 different dates usually. One for your pension insurance, and this starts from the day you applied. And then for the public health insurance and the long-term care insurance, they set a date from the day when you are accepted. What is really annoying is the expert insurances, because the KSK usually don't accept those neither as full-scale private insurance, nor obviously not as public health insurance. So what the KSK usually does is they say you are insured retrospectively, so you have to make the back payments for health insurance, long-term care insurance, and pension funds, and you don't get a refund because we don't accept your expert insurance. So the money that you pay for the expert health insurance in the meantime is gone. I have seen cases where the KSK accepted the expert health insurance as private insurance, and they set the date to the date of acceptance. And I would always recommend, if you are in Mavista, Feather, whatever, if you get accepted to the KSK, to ask them if they can do this, but they might reject your offer. But just try it, give it a try. So because you might save a lot of money. Let's say you pay 70 euros a month to your expert insurance, and the whole procedure of getting accepted takes 10 months. The 700 euros are gone. So try to do it. If you are already in a public health insurance, you can stay there. If you had private insurance until here or an expert insurance, you can now join the public health insurance and you can choose the one you like. You can also stay in the private health insurance and get subsidies for that, but this is a bit tricky. Usually, I would always recommend to join the public health insurance. So you can choose one of the many. If you don't speak German that well, I would always recommend to choose a health insurance that has an English-speaking customer service. There are a lot of them recently. But yeah, the rest is, I think there's not really that many differences between the health insurances. Okay, you are in. What's happening now? Each year you have to make a new estimation correctly and right on time. Now they have a system where you receive a QR code in September, and with that QR code, you can then online make your annual estimation. If you, yeah, you can, if you are not sure on how to make your estimation, you can use the average of the last years, or you can use the actual income of the last year. This is also usually not complained. Or you just make a rough estimation. This is what happens most of the times. So you roughly have to say, okay, I assume it's going to be 15,000, but maybe it's 30,000, but it can also be 10,000. So you say 50,000 seems realistic. And then if you see you have changes throughout the year, you can always adjust your estimation. You can do that each month. You have to, there is a PDF for that, and you just hand it in, and then they adapt it. Don't try to compensate initial overestimates with underestimates. But yeah, try to bring it as close to the actual income as possible. If you have, I don't know, if you have an estimation of 15,000 and then you end up making 17,000, like this type of areas, it's maybe not necessary to make an adjustment. Also depending on how close you were in the years before. But if there's like a larger deviation, then you should definitely do the adjustment. Also the other way around, because you don't want to pay too much. If you estimated 15,000 and you just have an income of 10,000 euro in that year, you end up paying too much for each month, and there is no refund for that. That money is also just gone. Your annual income must be more than 3,900 euros a year. It can fall below this threshold twice within 6 years. And also the years of 2020 until 2022 are not considered. So this still affects period. If you are in the KSK already since 6 years, you might know this already, that these years are not considered. People who have just graduated from university are granted a 3-year period as career starters. You don't have to graduate from university. Actually, this applies to everyone who starts as a self-employed artist. This does not apply for artists that have been active in their countries for a couple of years, then move to Germany and start a career in Germany. Because what counts is your art, when did your artistic career start, no matter where. So you can have like an experience of being a musician in France for 5 years, and then you move to Germany, and then when you apply for the KSK, they will not consider you as a career starter. Be prepared to get audited. 5% of its members are audited, so on average, yeah, you will be audited at least once or twice in your career usually. During an audit, the KSK will primarily verify that your income estimations align with your actual income tax assessment. If they detect a systematic underestimation, you will be fined, and in severe cases, you might be expelled from the KSK. But this is a situation that also depends a lot on individual experiences. So we now have a small discussion also with Andri Jürgensen and Kathleen Parker. And maybe I'm going to start with Kathleen and ask you, you have been consulting a lot of artists with the KSK. What are your experiences with getting audited?
I have been audited myself, and I have also seen a lot of a fair few clients who have received the audit letter. In my experience with this, the KSK is generally interested in only the amounts of money on the tax returns, and if that information is generally fine and within acceptable percentages, then nothing else happens. I also have the feeling that it is generally an automated process where a human only steps in if something is sort of flagged as being unusual. There is I can find it and put it in the chat. There is an interesting tool that we found online, possibly by a law firm, that allows you to put in all of your details, what you told the KSK you earned and what you actually earned, and sort of identifies if there are going to be potentially any issues that would be flagged, that can be very useful to use. And the experience with my own audit was that I submitted the information in the tax returns and then heard nothing else for about 4 months. And then 4 months later, I got a notice saying that everything was fine and nothing had happened.
So it's nothing to be that much afraid of. It's your experience.
I think if you err on the side of caution and give realistic estimates of your earnings, and you are in regular contact with the KSK and you meet their deadlines in terms of submitting those earnings, I think there is absolutely nothing to be worried about.
Great. Andri, what are your experiences with that from a perspective of a lawyer? You might have had different cases.
Yes, you don't panic if you get a review. Don't panic because the KSK tolerates quite huge differences between your estimate and your real income. So if you earn like 15,000 euro and your average estimate is 10,000, then nothing will happen. So the KSK can't throw you out. No matter how huge this difference is, even if you estimate 10,000 and earn 1 million, you can't be thrown out. And the KSK can't get the money of the past, so they can't send you kind of an invoice and say you paid 20,000 less, so you have to pay it now. So every change is for the future. So if the KSK sees, oh, there are quite some differences, like 60% more income than estimated, then the KSK will adjust the fee you have to pay to the KSK for the future, not for the past, just for the future. So this is one point. The KSK can't throw you out. You don't have to pay what you saved in the past. There are just two options the KSK has. They can raise the monthly payment to the KSK, and you can be fined. But to be fined, there need to be really huge differences, like if you average, if you have an estimation of 10,000 and your real income is about 25,000, for example. So there are really huge differences. If that is the case, the KSK might fine you, but the fine is very low. So if we see the 4 years that are checked and you get a fine, you have saved a multiple of the fine. I will not say that you should make your estimation as low as possible. because it's a social security system, and it depends that everyone is paying what he has earned, or is paying depending on his income. But if you're not sure how the next year will be, and for sure nobody who is working self-employed knows what is happening next year, you can just reduce your estimation about 20%, 30%, and nothing will happen. And there's one trick that gives you, then if you use this trick, you can be quite sure that your estimation is good enough for the KSK and nothing will happen. If you just take the average of the last 4 years of your income. This is what the KSK does when she does a review. So just look at your income, your real income for the past 4 years, and take the average. And this can be your basis for the estimation for the next year.
Thank you so much, Andri and Kathleen, both for your insights. And yeah, don't panic. I think this is the general recommendation that can be made. We will go on now. A few good to knows that should be important if you are in the KSK, because otherwise you may have difficulties. First of all, you cannot have more than 1 employees. Employees are people that are employed with you on a social security basis. These are not customers that you assign with a job where you pay them a fee, But employees are people that are employed with you. So you can employ people, but only 1. And this also applies to mini jobbers. So if you have an assistant that is employed on a mini job basis with you, you cannot have a second person, because otherwise you might lose your membership in the KSK. And then there is the question of accident insurance. We have talked about it already. The accident insurance is not part of the KSK, and we have a lot of cases where people face difficulties because the accident insurance pays for work-related accidents and everything that happens in the aftermath. And for a lot of artists, especially for performing artists, but also artists that work with dangerous materials, chemicals, for instance, etc., visual artists, I would definitely recommend getting accident insurance. You can join the public accident insurance voluntarily. And there are some professional groups that must join the accident insurance. It's compulsory for photographers, for self-employed photographers, and also for self-employed graphic designers. This is not something that is audited, but technically from the law, it's mandatory for these 2 professional groups. And also, like a very important information, there is no chance of pausing your KSK membership. Once you are out, you are out. And if you want to get back to the KSK, you go through the whole procedure again. And there's not really a thing that, you already have been in the KSK, then the second time it will be quicker. That doesn't really work like that. So you must, unfortunately, you must go through the whole procedure again. And so this can happen if you get a full-time employment job, even for a couple of months. It's enough that the KSK says, okay, you are out, you're not eligible anymore. And then you are self-employed artists again, and you have to get back. So this is unfortunately something that occurs quite often. It's also a political topic that a lot of groups try to make advocacy for. But yeah, we don't really have any progress on that, unfortunately. A big question is how the KSK relates to Nebenjobs, which means basically jobs on the side that you do. And we will look into the different categories of what happens if you have a job on the side. We have a lot of examples. We start with a very basic example. You work in a bar as a mini jobber. And then also you are a self-employed artist. You make more than 3,900 euros a year from your self-employed artistic activity. No problem. A mini job is in the category of geringfügig. And if you have a mini job on the side, it's not an issue for the KSK. It might be an issue for your residence permit, but this is not the topic of today. Yeah. A second thing, so a mini job is something that happens in employment. So you are basically employed, although it's a different kind of employment without social security, so to say. Now we have another category. Let's say you also do something that is self-employment, but not artistic. Let's say you have a small online shop where you sell olive oil and you have an annual profit of 5,000 euros from your olive oil. Again, this is usually not a problem because it is classified as geringfügig. We have a threshold for Geringfügigkeit, which is basically the mini jobber threshold multiplied with 12 months. And this is 6,672 euros. If you are below that threshold, there will not be an issue. Then let's say you have sold a lot of olive oil. It goes really good. And you have an annual profit of 12,000 euros. And then you also have artistic work. And with the artistic work, you have an income profit of 10,000 euros. You will make a note to the KSK, and the KSK will examine your case and will most likely say your main activity is not the self-employed artistic activity, but it's still a relevant part. So you can stay in the KSK for the pension funds, but not for the health insurance. And then it depends what is your other activity. Your other activity is a non-artistic self-employed artistic activity. And then it means you can either join the public health insurance voluntarily and pay 2 times as much as you used to pay, or you go to a private health insurance, which might be cheaper. So yeah, this is the case if your non-artistic self-employed activity is more important than your self-employed artistic activity. Let's say now, okay, you had that situation, but fortunately your olive oil sales are going really good and you have a profit of 50,000 euros. Then the KSK will say okay, this is fine for now. There is a threshold of 48,300 euros for non-artistic activities. You are on top of that, so you will then completely be on your own in terms of social security. So if you want to make, you can pay, if you want to, you can pay to the pension funds voluntarily, but there is no matching from the KSK any longer, but you can also do something else with your income. Let's go to another category of examples. Let's say you are a self-employed dancer and then you get a job offer to be part of the Staatsballett. Now, what's important to know is that even in the arts, a lot of institutions don't work with self-employment simply because it's not possible, because the law doesn't allow to have a certain job in self-employment. With the dancers, especially in like this institutionalized dance companies, this is one case. Also with a lot of actors, especially in the field of film and theater, the law basically says you have to stick to regulations or to commands that the director, the choreographer makes. So you cannot be self-employed because you have to do something that someone tells you to do. So you are an employee, so to say. And yeah, this is something that exists in a lot of fields, and then it gets a bit tricky if you also work as a self-employed person. And then the KSK has to check, okay, where lies the responsibility? So you get the job offer from the Staatsballett. They offer a gross salary with a workload of 30 hours a week. Your income from self-employed activity is only roughly 1,000 euros a month. So the KSK will most likely say, Staatsballett is more important. This is your main activity. All the social security contributions have to be made by the Staatsballett. But you make more than 3,900 euros of annual profit from your self-employed artistic activity. So you can stay in the KSK, you have a right for the pension funds. And then you pay contributions to the pension funds according to your income from self-employed activity. Let's say you made a mistake. The contract with the Staatsballett is actually different. It's a full-time job, 39 hours a week. Salary is the same though. And then you can say, well, I still do my self-employed jobs. Like I do projects on the weekend, etc. So I still have my income. But then sometimes the KSK says, if you have a full-time job, the self-employed artistic activity cannot be relevant any longer. And they might kick you out. Same also applies when you earn more than a certain threshold, which is currently 4,025 euros. So let's say you get a job offer to be a solo dancer with only a workload of 24 hours a week, but your gross salary is 4,200 euros, then you would also lose your membership because you are above the threshold. So as you can see, for when you do jobs on the side that are not artistic or publicistic and or are not self-employed, you always have the difficulty that you have to check, okay, who is responsible? But it's not you that decide, but you make the notion to the KSK, and then they will decide upon your case. And then usually your employer will take the corresponding responsibilities if it applies. At the end, I also wanted to tackle two questions because they come up a lot. It's questions regarding family and questions regarding Bürgergeld, which now apparently won't be Bürgergeld any longer. But yeah, the concept to a certain degree will go on. So KSK and family. First of all, when you are insured through the KSK, you can also, it means usually you are in a public health insurance, and then you can add your children or your non-working spouses to the health insurance without paying an extra contribution. And as a side note, the non-working spouses can also do mini jobs, or they can have income from self-employed activity that is less than the 6,670 euros. So this is also possible. So you can have one contribution for maybe 3 or 4 people. It's possible. But obviously the pension fund is only for you. This affects the health insurance and the long-term care insurance. You also have access to Mutterschaftsgeld. This is the money that you receive 6 weeks before you give birth and the 8 weeks afterwards. But note, and this is something that comes up a lot because we do mainly consultancy for artists from non-European countries that recently relocated to Berlin. You only have access to the Mutterschaftsgeld if you have been in public health insurance for at least 6 months by the time of your estimated date of delivery. Not your actual delivery, but your estimated date. So yeah, it is sometimes interesting. So if you have become pregnant recently, start the application process as soon as possible, because you might be insured retrospectively, and then you can retrospectively receive the Mutterschaftsgeld. And during the time of your Mutterschutz, you also don't pay contributions to the KSK. Obviously, you also have access to Elterngeld. And honestly, it's a lot more bureaucratic work than for employees that apply for Elterngeld. But it's also interesting because you can juggle a bit with that. Because you can decide on the different months that you want to receive Elterngeld. And then you are not allowed to work in these months. But as a self-employed person, I mean, you can technically always work. It's important when you make the invoices. So this is sometimes a trick where self-employed artists can even get a bit more out of the Elterngeld than employees can. But with a lot of bureaucratic work, because for each month that you did work, your monthly income has to be determined in that specific period. And also important is when you so for the KSK, when you stop working as a self-employed artist, this is always the reason to end your membership. So when you start receiving Elterngeld, you basically have to note them that you will proceed with your working. So if you receive Elterngeld for a whole year, for 12 months, then it's sometimes tricky because then the KSK says, well, it seems you are stopping your activities and your membership might be terminated. It depends a bit. And then you might have to reapply. Same is also a bit true for Bürgergeld. It's the same logic. So if you receive Bürgergeld, and I'm still using the old term now, you basically have to assure that you still will be active as a self-employed artist, thinking about new ideas or trying to develop new projects. And then your KSK membership won't be terminated. And the job center is paying for your health insurance and for your long-term care insurance. But you must pay for the pension fund contributions. And this is usually the minimum fee that you pay then. So you would then make a note to the KSK saying that, okay, this year I will have a very low income, and then the minimum is something like 30 euros or so. And you will have to pay this from what you receive from the job center. As a side information, and this is really important, Bürgergeld is only accessible to EU citizens that have been working here before, for permanent residence permit holders, and for a certain group of asylum seekers and refugees. For everyone else from third countries that have a residence permit, for instance, for self-employed activity, paragraph 21.5, for instance, as soon as you apply for Bürgergeld, basically your residence permit becomes invalid. So this is it's not interesting for you what I'm saying right now. But for the other group, it is an option for a time when you don't have new job offers for self-employed activities that come in, that you can still stay in the KSK and receive Bürgergeld.